Hello, and welcome to this brief introductory demo that highlights a few of the key features of the RCG-enabled data framework. Most companies have taken the initial steps to leverage Hadoop technologies to create new data collection or integration solutions commonly referred to as data lakes. These solutions utilize a set of new technologies and require new skills to effectively operate and reliably deliver business information. Once the initial steps of creating a data lake are achieved, clients find that managing the flow of data through the data lake is complex, and they are forced to depend on traditional IT development efforts to acquire, store, and transform data in order to turn raw data into business information. One major challenge to effective data lake data flow is good governance, which starts with enabling data curation through logical segmentation of data within the lake. As this picture illustrates, the initial entry point of data should be in a raw area. The raw area is where data is kept as close to its original state as possible. Next is a conformed area, where data is cleansed and standardized to conform to governance requirements. Conformed data is then utilized or enhanced in the refined area, which prepares data for typical data use scenarios. Finally, published area supports data ready for specific use cases or integrations. Following this approach provides the capabilities to curate data and content on the data lake, thus avoiding the all too common data swamp. The RCG-enabled data framework supports data and operational governance to efficiently bring data from source to business-ready state and does not require specialized skills. For business users, the RCG-enabled data framework is designed to simplify and speed up the process of preparing data for immediate use in existing analytics or reporting solutions. For IT, it is important to note that it is built on open source structures that support full flexibility and extensibility of the framework. As shown in this picture, the RCG-enabled data solution is instrumental in managing data from the first point that data enters the data lake. The framework manages the metadata as it is transformed and flows through the data lake. By integrating data wrangling or preparation tools like Trifacta, the framework makes self-service data exploration and discovery possible. Our RCG-enabled data ingestion component makes it easy and fast to standardize the ingestion process across all data sources. This UI-driven process design takes data from any source and delivers it to any destination. For the purposes of this demonstration, we have created a fictional retailer called ValueMart. Our demo will utilize ValueMart's new source for global store data, which needs attention. Before we jump in, I want to highlight three capabilities of the RCG-enabled data framework. The framework empowers regular users to quickly and reliably ingest data sources through a centralized and standardized, yet still flexible process. The framework utilizes integrated data wrangling tools to easily design rules for data cleansing and transformation. These rules can be immediately leveraged to prepare the data for business use every time it is updated. We are confident that our solution will enable data standardization and enable business rule-driven data preparation for any data, anytime, anywhere. Let's begin by opening the RCG-enabled data framework workflow designer to get started. The RCG-enabled data workflow designer is a graphical data workflow tool. It has three main parts. On the left is a list of all sources and targets available. Both sources and targets leverage common connectors, which can be customized to your environment. On the right is our canvas, where we will design our data workflows from source to target. On top is a menu, providing us access to the features of the tool. To build a workflow, in this case an ingestion job, simply locate the data source on the left. In this case, we will be working with the global stores data we have existing in a ValueMart database running MySQL. Select MySQL, ValueMart, and I see the tables available. To put it on my canvas, I simply select and drag over global stores. I now have my source. I need to define my destination. I'm going to choose on my data lake a directory called data demo. drag that over as well to my canvas. I have my source, I have my destination. I merely need to connect the two. Provide any configuration parameters. In this case, I'm just going to use the default. And I now have a workable data flow from an external source to my data lake. I'm going to go ahead and run this job by going up to Jobs, Run Job. And I can see I get a job ID for what I'm just running. Now, I've chosen to just run this directly, but I have the ability, as you can see, to schedule this job. Let's go over to our data lake and just validate that that file has come in to data demo. And I just did a refresh, and here is my file for global stores. That's great, but what we really want to do is make this data easier to work with, so we should put this data in a table that we can query. To do this, we can simply select this file as our source. To do this, I'm going to go back to our workflow designer. I'm going to start a new workflow. And this time, I'm going to pick something within the lake, my new file under Data Demo called Global Stores. Drag that onto the canvas as my source. And for my destination, I'm going to pick a database structure under Hive. Value Mart Raw. I have my source, I have my destination. I can merely connect the two, provide additional information, or use the default. I now am ready to run this job to put this data into a table form. Before I do that, I'm going to go over to my data lake, quickly browse Value Mart Raw, validate that I do not have any information or tables there. I do not. I'm going to go back and I'm going to run this job, doing the same way I did before. Jobs, Run Job. I get my job ID. When that's complete, I can go back to my data lake. I can refresh. I now see that I have a new file called Global Stores. I can query this file. And I now see that the data is in a table format. I have maintained the metadata for all the column headers. I can see that I've brought in quite a bit of data, all from my original source system. And I'm ready to now leverage this data. But before I can use it for business purposes, I need to do some data cleansing. To do that, I'm going to go to Trifecta. Within Trifecta, I'm going to need to import my data set. I simply go to Datasets, Import Data, navigate to my Cleanse Data area, Value Mart Raw, and I see that I have my Global Stores table. I can simply create this data set by hitting the plus button. I now have a new data set to come in. I now would just hit Import and Wrangle to start to deal with my data cleansing and transformation rules. Let's go ahead and do that. The main Trifecta screen to do data wrangling or data preparation should be comfortable for most users. It provides an Excel-like interface. The data in each column is provided. You can see the data column names. This next row provides some instant profile information. I'll take a look at ownership type for a minute here. See that this column has 3 values. And by rolling over it, I can see how many of those particular values are in my data set. In this case, let's say CO is 44% of the data. I can navigate this data, scroll down, scroll around, see the different columns that are available to me. But one thing I quickly noticed is this data has a lot of duplication. So the first thing I'm going to do, my first cleansing task, is to dedupe this data. To do that, I simply go down and choose a transformation. In this case, I'm going to pick Deduplicate. it shows me a preview option of how this data will be impacted if I take this action. Looks good, so I'm going to add that to the recipe. Now I see the data as if it has already been deduped. This did not actually change the underlying data in the table. Again, this is just defining the rules for data cleansing and data transformation. Trifecta uses a recipe method to collect those rules, but doesn't change the underlying data. The next thing I want to do is go back, and because of the profile information I looked at previously, I want to be able to filter down this data, because let's say I'm only interested in corporately owned stores. To do this, I simply select the down arrow on the column, choose Filter, Value is Exactly, and I'm put in a preview mode again. This time it is waiting for me to enter the value in which I want to filter. For this case, I'm just going to say I want to see only corporately owned stores, which is coded CO. I add that to the recipe. I now see that my data has been restricted only to this, CO type records. So now that we have our basic recipe, we want to be able to save this recipe in a form that's usable by our ingestion process flow. To do this, I simply go over to the recipe and say Open Recipe. I can see that the recipe is stored in English type version, explaining what process I followed. So the first thing I did was remove duplicate rows. I kept all rows where ownership type was equal to CO. What I want to do is download this recipe, but I want to download it in a script form. The script is what will be leveraged by our RCG enabled data framework tool upon ingestion. To do this, I simply select the CLI script and hit download. Now that we have our script, let's see how it can be leveraged. Returning to our ingestion process flow, let's make this a complete productionalized type process. To do that, I'm going to reintroduce my original source. It's external to my data lake, and connect it at the beginning of my process. Now I want to add in the cleansing rules that I have just defined through Trifecta. I can navigate to the Trifecta area for cleansed data and pull that rule into my flow. Simply connecting it to the end of my process allows me to define an entire end-to-end process from external source to cleanse data, all without any code. Now that we see some of the simple yet powerful features of the RCG-enabled data framework, let's summarize what we've done. We were able to quickly ingest data. We were able to easily define data cleansing and transformation rules. And we were able to leverage those rules to prepare our data for business use. The RCG-enabled data framework works on any data, anytime, anywhere. That concludes this brief demonstration. For more information on the RCG-enabled solutions, or for any of our big data offerings, please contact RCG through any of the following methods. Thank you.